Let's review my example solution for day 4's assignment. You should have created a new route that uses the post HTTP method. You could also have used put, but as you aren't fetching any data, the get method is not acceptable here. Your route path should contain a parameter for specifying the title of the new book. You could have also accepted the new book title in the body of the request, if that's your preference. Access the current array of books, and then construct a new book object by taking the title of the book and creating an ID based off the number of books currently stored in the array. Push your new book onto the books array, and then return that modified array to the client. This assignment will have checked that you're able to identify when you should use a post, put, or get request, and that you've understood how to use path parameters, and that you've understood that you can add extra data to the locals data arrays that you've set up before. Section 5, Testing and Debugging. Unit testing, approaches, and tooling. Today, we're going to focus on testing and debugging your applications. Testing is a great way to ensure you need to do less debugging, so let's start there. In this video, we're going to cover what unit tests are, as opposed to other types of testing, the different test runners that are available, assertion engines that are available, an overview of mocks, spies, and stubs, and how test coverage can be generated. Finally, we'll look at the Jest testing framework and how it provides the majority of the features you need to write and run your tests. So unit testing, as the name suggests, is the testing of small units or components of code. Usually when it comes to JavaScript applications, the smallest unit of code you can and should test is an individual function or method. Don't confuse unit tests with any other form of testing, such as integration testing, where you test the interaction of several units, or your units with third-party code. All your testing is that given a set of inputs, your function methods produce expected output. Unit testing allows you to iterate your code faster as you gain increased confidence that the functions you've already written and tested continue to work even when you change other areas of your code. Unit testing in this way also helps you improve the modularity of your code. Testing JavaScript has advanced rapidly over the last few years, and as such, the tooling available for performing testing has expanded hugely. There are lots of different pieces of tooling that come together to form an effective testing platform, and the first of these is the test runner. Test runners are responsible for locating your tests and executing them. They're not necessarily responsible for providing assertions or generating reports or coverage. However, many test runners do include this functionality and could therefore probably be referred to as testing frameworks. I've provided a short list of test runners here, but this list is by no means exhaustive, and the runners I've included here, some of them do include other functionality that make them more of a framework, so please feel free to investigate the best runner for your needs. Assertion libraries provide the methods that make up your actual tests. When you want to test that a certain object has a certain property, or that a certain property has a certain value, assertions are what you use. Assertion libraries tend to follow a behavior-driven development format, whereby your assertions read almost like a sentence, but the form of these sentences will change depending on the library you're using, so don't be surprised to see some differences. I've provided a couple of examples on screen. So here we've said that we expect a variable called value to be 12. So expect value to have a value of 12. Expect true to be a boolean. So this is checking the type of this variable. 42 must be above 13. User should have property pets with length of 4. So this user object should have a property pets, an array that has 4 elements in it. As you can see, all of these different sentences follow a different sort of format. So these are all from different assertion libraries. Much like test runners, there are many different assertion libraries, and again, it's up to you to choose your favorite. I've listed some here. Mocks, spies, stubs, and fakes are all ways of accomplishing similar goals, taking methods or objects that are related to the unit you're testing and ensuring they either return some expected data or testing whether something has happened during a test. This is essentially a way of having control over pieces of code that you don't normally control, whether it's a third-party method, calling some resource from a network destination, or anything like that. Here I'm using Synon's fake type to create a function with a fixed return of this apple pie string. I can call this function and get the expected string back when I log it, and then I can check how many times this function was called. So if I was to call it more times than this call count property would increase. Just like with test runners and assertion libraries, there are different libraries that deal with mocks, spies, and stubs. These are collectively known as test doubles. You'll need to do your own research to evaluate your preferred choice. Synon is the one you've seen me provide an example for, but test double is also fantastic, and you can also use the mocking functions inside Jest, the framework. Once you've started writing tests for your code, it's important to know how much of your code is covered by those tests. This helps you to avoid edge case bugs where you haven't tested a specific route through your code, such as loop conditions, switch statements, or anything else really. The main JS code coverage call is Istanbul, but there are others available. Again, you can search for these if you really want to, but Istanbul is probably the main one. And there are many third-party tools do the actual generation that make use of Istanbul. As we've progressed through these examples of test tooling for JavaScript projects, you've probably noticed that Jest has appeared in virtually every category. Jest is a test framework, so it provides either from its own functionality or by using a third-party project. For example, Jest uses Istanbul for code coverage. It provides all the features and functionality you need to perform testing on your JavaScript code. I've linked here to the Jest webpage. It's definitely a good idea to check it out. Jest is a very fast-moving project, so any information I provide to you here is probably going to become outdated quite quickly. Let's get Jest installed now. Make sure you're in the app directory that you created in the last section. And then you want to npm install Jest. Then you want to save it, but you need to save it as a dev dependency. You don't need Jest to run your code. You're just using Jest in development, so we need to save it to a separate section of your package.json. Now that Jest is installed, we can edit our package.json, and we're going to add a new line that explains to npm how to run our tests. Now this essentially tells npm that when we run the test command, it should run Jest. Let's try that now. As you can see, Jest tried to run, but it couldn't find any tests for it to operate. As you can see, Jest tried to run, but it couldn't find any tests matching the default patterns for it to run, so it's done nothing. Now that we're all set up with Jest, we can start writing our tests in the next video.